Hello and good morning. Welcome to today's webinar looking at the situation unfolding in the Holy Land and the dynamics around Israel and Hamas and conflict that's been ongoing there. My name is Jeremy Barker, I'm the director of the Religious Freedom Institute's Middle East Action Team. Privileged to be serving today as the moderator for today's conversation. Really privileged to have joining us from Amman, Jordan, Mr. Daoud Kuttab, an experienced journalist, a Palestine columnist for Al Monitor, among a number of other roles that he has across the region, as well as Mr. Botrus Mansour, a lawyer, author, and evangelical leader based in Nazareth, Israel. So Daoud and Botrus, thank you so much for joining R5 for today's conversation.
Welcome.
Hi. Hello.
As we get started, and there's so much to unpack from all that's unfolded over the last really 10 days or so, and I guess actually to just kind of start out for our viewers, recognizing the perspectives that both of you bring to this in the roles that you have, the places where you're situated, your experience working on these topics over a number of years. I'd be curious to start off with just what, as you woke up on the morning of October 7th, what were kind of the initial thoughts that came to mind as you saw the events that were transpiring on that first day? And Daoud, maybe starting with you, what were your thoughts on October 7th?
It happens that on that Saturday, we were at a wedding at the Dead Sea, the Jordanian side of the Dead Sea. And for some reason, my phone wasn't working and the internet wasn't working. So I actually had very little information. And every now and then, somebody said, they're trying to reach you, they're trying to talk to you or whatever. But never in my expectation did I expect that this would be as wide and as deep and as, if you want to call it courageous or stupid or terroristic, whatever, that this event would be. It blew a lot of preconceived ideas of Israeli security. It blew a lot of preconceived ideas of the preparedness of Israel, and it also blew a lot of ideas as to international reaction, because what we've seen since then is a very strong support for Israel and almost total dehumanization of the Palestinians. And, nobody's innocent. There are no saints here in this conflict, but certainly every one of us and every child, man, woman, and child, Israeli, Jewish, Israeli, Arab, Palestinian, Muslim, Palestinian, Christians, we're all made in God's image. And what it seems that people are trying to ignore or bypass is this humanity of all of us. And but yes, it took us totally by surprise to a certain degree. I have to say that because many of us have been expecting an explosion. Many of us have been saying there has to be something giving people hope, because people without hope do crazy things. And removing optimism, removing peace, removing hope from millions of Palestinians we had all expected something, maybe not exactly what happened, but there was an expectation of an explosion, and what we've seen. And right now, everybody's trying to see how can we get out of this vicious cycle of violence where people are killing each other, people are taking revenge, people, are counting how many Israeli children were killed, but now we're counting how many Palestinian children are killed. This is not the way to live. This is not the way to resolve a conflict.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll come to much of those throughout our conversation. And Botrus, coming to you in Nazareth, within kind of Israel proper, as Daoud mentioned, there's some ideas around security and other things that were shocking in this. So yeah, as you thought of the events of October 7th, how did this hit you as someone living in Nazareth?
Yeah, I had a birthday the day before, Friday, so we had a good time. But of course, Saturday morning, I woke up, I looked at my phone, I found some messages, WhatsApp messages that referred to something happening, an attack happening in the southern part of Israel. So I quickly opened the TV, but I was really shocked and surprised of the scale. We're used here in Israel with explosions and acts and killing and so on, but I never imagined that it would be that big, that grand. So yeah, it's devastating. It's difficult. It's a big shock. It's saddening, of course. Any loss of life is something that we mourn with the people that are mourning, and but of course there is the larger context of things. Why did this happen? And we know the context, which was really almost inviting something like that, unfortunately. And now we're in a cycle again. We'll see. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, later.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And both of you have alluded to this already, of considering kind of the context of what preceded that, and how what is, as you're looking at this, and Daoud, you mentioned, or you and others kind of anticipating there may be something like this coming. Are there particular policies or actions over the preceding months that you feel kind of set the stage for something as explosive as this to occur?
Well, let's put things in perspective as you asked, and I'm going to give you three important dates. We are in the 75th year of a conflict that has caused thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees. We are in a situation where for 56 years, the West Bank and Gaza Strip, and mostly the West Bank now, has been under a foreign military occupation. We're also in the 16th year of the Gaza Strip being under a very tight siege, in where Israel controls what goes in, what goes out, and how much water, how much electricity is allowed to be used in Gaza. So this context is not something that is sustainable. We cannot continue to have refugees, occupation, and siege at the same time. And unfortunately, a lot of the avenues that normally resolve such conflicts are being closed, whether the political level has been closed, whether the nonviolent level has been closed, whether the going to the international courts are closed. Palestinians are searching for an avenue that can get rid of this militaristic occupation. And add to that, a new element has come in the last, especially in the last few years, but in the last year specifically, which is a religious element. And religious elements, when they get involved in politics, is a very toxic situation. When you have fundamentalists, whether they're Muslim fundamentalists, Jewish fundamentalists, or even Christian fundamentalists, when they start getting involved in the politics, and when they start, instead of separating religion from state, they start to annexing and using religion as a tool for politics, whether it's in Al-Aqsa Mosque where the Jews are trying to pray and angering the Muslims, or in the sense of Hamas, of using and getting recruits because they are angry at what's happening in Jerusalem. Either case, it's something that we, and I personally am totally against, that we need to remove the toxicity of religion and solve a problem on a political level. And to me, understanding this context, I think allows your listeners, your viewers, to understand, not to justify. And I need to be very careful. I'm not justifying anything. I want your audience to understand that there has been a build-up for years, and there has been warnings And we have been telling everyone, please give people hope. Without hope, people, will do crazy things. And unfortunately, hope was closed down for so long. We've not had negotiations, Jeremy, for 10 years. For 10 years, Israel has refused to meet with the Palestinian leadership. We have not had a single meeting to try to find a solution. That's not how you solve a problem. That's how you kick the can down the road, and you can't keep kicking the can down the road. Sometimes it's going to blow up in everybody's face, our faces, everybody's faces. And we are now in this catastrophe that has been the result of just no one wanting to resolve a conflict.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, often when religion comes into it, it becomes a really potent rhetorical device that groups are able to use to gain support or to essentialize the conflict in ways that can be really explosive. So I think as you said, that context is helpful, not excusing, but in analyzing the rationale and the rhetoric that was used to motivate at least some aspects of these actions. Botrus, I'd be curious your insights from this with the different hats that you wear as a lawyer, as a evangelical religious leader. How do you see the context that's preceded these events?
At the end of the day, also relating to what Daoud said, when you don't have hope, it's a hopeless case, people don't have anything to lose, unfortunately. People especially in Gaza, under the siege, one of the more populated areas in the whole world, where they don't have any type of freedom, where any merchandise, even anything, is controlled by Israel. They reach, and that's a soil that's very open to fundamentalist, radical ideas. It's very easy to sell that type of ideology, which is hatred and very fundamentalist, very aggressive against the other, when the whole situation is one that does not give any hope. Just imagine, as Dawood said, for 10 years, not one meeting. Abbas repeatedly said that we are willing to a two-state solution. Once I remember on a TV program in Israel, they asked him, what about Safad? This is where he originated. He was born there, he lived there. This is a Jewish town today. It used to be a Palestinian Arab town at the time in the northern part of Israel, very close to Lebanon. And they asked him, what about, they wanted, to trap him, put a trap so that he would say, oh, you are not forgetting Safad. He just said, forget about Safad. It's going to be something that we might dream about, but it's not on the table at all. He was willing to talk about the two-state solution with the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza as one state, and Israel with security as another state. But still, Israel was, sorry to put it that way, they were quite arrogant. And they thought, okay, the Oslo Accords did not work for different reasons. Then, okay, there is no partner for peace. And they were not willing to hear anybody who was talking about any possibility of maybe moving small steps, maybe giving a little bit of hope to these people. And as a result, you will have groups like Hamas gaining strength. And what happened was that Israel, unfortunately, and again, of course, I condemn what happened. Of course, I'm not approving, I'm not justifying. But at the same time, Israel worked. They benefited from the fact that Hamas was strong in Gaza and that there was divide and conquer between Fatah or the PLO on the one side in the West Bank and Gaza, and Hamas in Gaza. And they actually accepted that Qatar would send millions of dollars every month to Hamas, and they were willing to help them gain strength and everything. That was their conception. And today, even in Israel, they talk about the total collapse of the conception that Israel had concerning Hamas. And this is why they had a surprise. But at the end of the day, this is a radical Islamist, very extreme group that had no hope, and they were sort of nurtured, I would even say, in an indirect way, and as a result, you reap these ugly, fatal results. So this is what happened. It's misfortunate, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that, yeah, and the lack of hope and movement has only fed the ways in which Hamas has instrumentalized the situation even prior to this, and then and what's certainly tragic, and we'll move to, in some ways, the conversation around what's happened in the 10 days or so since the attack. But for Hamas, what they knew would happen in Israel was horrific, and even more so, what they knew would happen as a result of their actions in Gaza also puts Palestinian lives at risk, as trading them and really putting them on offer as well, which is really tragic. And so I'd be curious, and not that we need to go to kind of the minute by minute type of accidents or actions following this the attacks on the 7th of October, but if you've looked at the responses that have happened over these last 10 days, both within Israel and in Gaza, kind of on the community level, and then maybe we'll come on the rhetorical level as well. What are the things that you've seen that have perhaps been most troubling and most concerning, that we should be looking at as we're gauging the responses, the actions being taken by the Israeli forces, by regional actors, or by those in the community? Yeah, so what have you seen over the last 10 days as you look at the responses? And yeah, Daoud, maybe we'll start with you.
What the most troubling thing is that the dehumanization level has reached such level that has equated first all Palestinians with Hamas, and then secondly all Palestinians with the being animals and barbaric and dehumanized and so on, which is done to explain and to justify whatever they were planning to do. But when you hear, I mean, you have here a group that is not a state, it's not even a recognized state, is doing something bad, it's bad. But when you have a government, a member of the United Nations, actually saying, the defense minister said, we're going to cut off water, electricity, and food to 2.2 million Palestinians. What do you mean? Cut off water and electricity? I mean, it's not acceptable. You have the president of Israel, a relatively moderate, supposedly moderate person, saying there are no civilians in Gaza. They're all, what do you mean there are no civilians? How can you, I mean, this is to me what was troubling. And I think part of it has been because the amazing and powerful support that Israel has had, maybe it's justified, but they have seen that as a green light to do anything they want, to do whatever they wanted to do in the occupied territories, even in violation of international law. We had a meeting today and Human Rights Watch saying we have condemned documented cases of using white phosphorus. That's illegal according to international law. We have condemned the bombing of civilian populations. We have condemned the demand by Israel to move 1.1 million Palestinians out of their homes for no action. They did nothing wrong. These individuals, you're against Hamas, fine. Find Hamas and do whatever you want. But the rest of the population should not be held hostage by either Hamas or by Israel. They are human beings created at the image of God. And we should not lose our humanity. I have a feeling, and maybe Botrus can say more, that what we're seeing is more of revenge than a military operation. There's no military tactic in blowing up an entire building, many of them on its civilian population. If you say this was a military outpost, okay, that's fine. But they're not making that claim. They're not saying that the houses that they've demolished were housing Hamas people. They're just doing it to kind of show, and you see on Israeli media, they're actually showing the Israeli public the images of destroyed Gaza, I think, in a way, to soothe them, to kind of vent off the anger that they maybe justifiably have, but you can't do that. You cannot use other people as fodder to resolve the anger that you have. And again, there are rules. We're not living in I don't know, second
Jungle.
century. We're living in a rule of law and international covenants and human rights covenants, and I'm that is what upsets me, that there isn't an understanding, even though what went through is very bad, but to try to get more Palestinians killed than you had killed, to get more children killed than were killed by in the attack. That's but his name Gandhi said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, leaves the whole world blind and toothless. I mean, we cannot do that. This is a cycle of violence, needs to be stopped, and that really bothered me, that you're seeing a permanent member of the UN act and say things that, even Hamas is saying, yeah, we made mistakes, we shouldn't have done things, and some of the things we told our people not to do. But Israel is not only doing things, they're actually justifying the blocking of water and electricity to her population, and not allowing a humanitarian corridor, which is part and parcel of the rule of law and the law of war. That's a big bridge to cross.
Yeah, and Botrus would be happy to have you weigh in on at this stage as well.
Yeah, of course, the shock in Israel was huge, and Israel retaliated in a very tough way, of course, very forceful way. And even internally, inside Israel, Arabs, Palestinians who are Israeli citizens like myself, everybody was in shock, and we are not even free to say what we think. A lot of people were arrested inside Israel because of that they showed some sympathy, not to Hamas, showing sympathy to what Hamas did. Okay, I understand, and I am for taking measures against them, but because they were showing sympathy to these civilians that are being shelled, with bombing, and left these days like refugees. So it's a huge shock in Israel. I can understand, but I cannot accept that you need to retaliate. Okay, we are Christians at the end of the day. What does that mean? You have 2.2 million people in 365 square kilometers in a very small area. You want to fight Hamas? How are you going to fight them when they are inside under the ground, or they live among hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians? Remember that Hamas performed a coup in Gaza, and they took power authority through power there, and they have not had any elections in Gaza. So it's an authority that was imposed on people. Most of the people do not accept these things. Still, they are being targeted. What I found very, very difficult was the people that were asked to leave their homes. More than 500,000 people have already left their homes in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, going south. These were the Israeli instructions. Seeing those people just holding their mattresses and walking, going south. Where are they going? I don't know. Maybe UNRWA refugee camps, or maybe to relatives or something. But this is a very, very small area. But seeing them again, this brought back to us what happened in the Nakba, how people were forced to leave their homes because of the war happening again to those poor people. So my heart goes out to them. I cannot lie and tell you, no, these are civilians, innocent civilians. At the end of the day, I know there is an issue that needs to be settled with the Hamas. Okay, Israel needs to find the way. I don't know. I'm not an army tactic person, but At the end of the day, we have international law that they have to abide to, and these people are not targets to be killed and to be displaced, like in that such an easy way.
I think, if I may add to what Botrus said, I think what has happened is that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu was asleep on the wheel. I mean, they're so drunk in power, they're so powerful, such a powerful country, that they thought they're indivisible, that they cannot, nobody would dare do what Hamas did. I mean, the borders they thought was unpenetratable. And all of a sudden, they were caught, without having done their homework, without listening to advice. Even 3 days before, the Egyptians told them an explosion is coming, be careful. They didn't listen to anybody. They were, again, sorry to say, they're like drunk in power. They're so powerful, and they're still powerful, that they are not willing to even think anybody would dare test them. I think a lot of what we're seeing today, yes, it is revenge, but it's also trying to clean up their mistakes on the blood of other people, and that's not how you do it. Israel has been divided in the last year because of the judicial review and so on. And many of the reserve soldiers said they're not going to serve in the army. They were losing their deterrence day in, day out. And many of the Israeli generals were warning Netanyahu, you're going the wrong way. You're causing the Israeli army to be weaker. No attention. He wants to get out of prison because he's being charged with 4 major criminal charges, and he wants to change the rules of the law, and he paid little attention. I mean, right now nobody's saying this because Israel is in mourning and whatever, but I think politically Netanyahu is over. I don't think once this particular round is over, Israel probably would have a very strong independent investigation, and it will show, I think, that there are a lot of people, including the top officials, who were asleep on the wheel. They forgot their job, and they were paying attention to their personal stories.
Yeah, I think that context of domestic affairs and even regional affairs helps to play into conditions of this, and the discussions around the Abraham Accords, the attempted normalization agreements, and particularly the Saudi dynamics and how that influenced the calculus of Hamas leadership and others of whether to move or not. And
Jeremy, just one note. 2 weeks before that, when Netanyahu was in America and the UN, and the news started coming out about it's going forward with the Saudis, and then this interview that MBS had with Fox, was it, or Fox. Yeah, one of the media outlets, and then Netanyahu said that the Palestinians should not have a veto, and he said in Hebrew at least that we are bypassing, our conception was bypassing the Palestinian issue by going to the Arab countries, and we have succeeded in that. This is what he said. This is my plan to go to. We're always told that you solve the Palestinian problem first, and then you reach a peace treaty with the Arab countries. And I did the other way around, and it did work. So what would a Palestinian in the West Bank or in Gaza feel? I'm not justifying again, and this is not a reason to massacre people and kill kids and do all that. That's really horrible. I don't have words even to say it, and I hate it when people just are waiting for us to condemn. Of course, we condemn. Of course, we are against this. But at the end of the day, what kind of hope are you giving when you are saying, okay, we forgot you, we now have a peace treaty with the Emirates, and now with the Saudis even, and of course with Egypt before that and everything, and then Palestinians are just thrown under the bus. That's it. We don't care about them. That also contributed to the whole atmosphere that helped such criminal Hamas people do this.
Yeah, and I think for Hamas as an actor with political interests, security interests, that helps to motivate the actions that they took to drive that forward, and recognizing the concerns that were present there. One of the things that I know we've been looking at with concern is around what's been mentioned a number of times, is the language around dehumanization, and really essentializing this, and how this has sparked really concerning waves of both anti-Semitic activities in Europe, even in the United States, as well as anti-Palestinian, anti-Muslim violence. We saw just yesterday, the day before, a brutal killing of a 6-year-old boy and his mom, stabbed multiple times because of this, but also virulent rhetoric praising as beautiful the actions of Hamas, and really anti-Semitic activities as well. And so as we think about what you both have mentioned a number of times, of the importance of seeing the human dignity of people, what are steps that we can be taking for both of you as a Christian voice speaking into this, but these resources are within each religious tradition? What are steps that we move forward to both address that rising justification of extremism and of dehumanization, both globally and then in the context of Palestine and Israel in particular?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about the attempts to pray in the Muslim mosque and so on, but also the last year has seen a huge uptick in some of the extremist Jewish attacks on churches, on cemeteries, spitting almost every single day. Whenever Jews pass by a church with a cross, or with a nun or a priest wearing a cross, they would spit on the ground. And very few Israelis have done anything to kind of condemn that, to stop it. And they'd say, oh, this is part of the Jewish tradition and so on. And some of the Jews said, no, this is not part of our tradition. Don't blame it on tradition. But this is part of like kind of a Jewish supremacy that we have been worrying about. Because once you start thinking that your religion, your sect, your nationality is superior to others, whether it's white supremacy, Jewish supremacy, Islamic supremacy, Indian, supremacy, that's a dangerous, toxic, slippery slope that if you start on it, you'll get into the religious fights that, politicians, secular politicians, normally apply give and take negotiations. They have positions, but they're willing to make adjustments. If you're a religious person with very strong religious feelings, you don't make compromises. You think that you know what is best. Your God has told you the right track, and there's no compromise. And so I think as a Christian believer, we are called to be peacemakers. We are called by Amos to let justice flow like a river. But we need to be careful not to allow our spirituality, our religion, like some of the Christian Zionists do, to actually dictate our politics. I think we should keep faith between us and our Lord, between us and our fellow Christians, but not to allow our faith, any faith, to dictate the political situations. It's very, very dangerous.
Yeah, well said by Daoud. I don't have anything to argue with that. But of course, anti-Semitism is disgraceful, what's happening. But Daoud mentioned attacks on the Christians even. Although I don't think we were a factor in what I don't think Hamas cared so much, but at least it showed how this Jewish supremacy and this Islamic Jewish religious war is why it should go forward. And it helped. It was like a fuel on the fire to add to it. And add to it, more than 200 people in the West Bank were killed by settlers and It's also something that I think the media has not covered enough. And it's something there happening because of this right-wing government that we have, and the green light that people like Bezalel Smotrich and Ben Gvir, these two ministers who are way to the far right, radical. I don't want to use more harsh words against them, but they are fanatic people, really. And what they were able to do, praising and a lobby in the Knesset of someone who threw a bomb and killed a whole family, burned a whole family of 4 people, the Wabshi family. They have a lobby in the Knesset for to acquit him, although he was convicted in a court of law in Israel by 3 judges in a very convincing case by the prosecution. So just to show you what kind of mentality. And that causes, a reaction, a very negative reaction, of course. But as Daoud said, when you have religion, it becomes messy, becomes so difficult. For us as believers, I don't live in Gaza, of course. I've been to Gaza in the past, of course. It's a blockage today, and our effect is very small. But at least in our communities, we try to talk into people who have the same mindset like us about peacemaking, and about even Muslims and Jews who are open Reform Jews, and even Muslims who are moderate Muslims, and talk to them about the need that these values of peacemaking and of coexistence and accepting one another and respecting one another should prevail, and not those of the fanatic and radical Muslims, Jews, and Christians as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. And as you look to what's unfolding now or in the coming weeks, as there continues to be and will be steps from the Israeli side to hopefully pursue justice rather than vengeance, but that kind of ongoing military side is one part of it, as well as there's needs to be steps on a political solution to this as well. What are some perhaps key steps that you're looking for from Israeli leadership, from Palestinian or regional leaders, or even President Biden is coming to the region later today? What are maybe some of the key decision points that you're watching and hoping may be positive rather than escalating steps? And Daoud, maybe we'll start with you again as well.
I think the most used word by politicians in the last 10 years or 20 years has been the word two-state solution. And it is a reasonable word because it allows for what I call an amicable divorce. We are stuck without being married and having the pleasure and the confidence of marriage, and we're not being divorced, and so we're kind of caught in between. I think right now there is so much blood and hatred. We need to find some space between each other, and I think the two-state solution has been the best compromise that exists. The problem is that the two-state solution has only been supported on one side. Israel has been recognized since 1948. And every effort to recognize the Palestinian state alongside of Israel, not instead, but alongside of Israel, with really good security between both sides and so on, has been rebuffed. I keep asking often my Israeli colleagues that I engage with, give me a plan. Give me a plan, any plan that actually can produce a result that we can end this miserable occupation we have. And make sure it will work. They say, well, politically. Okay, so we're trying political negotiation. They say nonviolence. We've been trying nonviolence. BDS has been trying to do nonviolent boycotts. They said, let's try International Criminal Court. That hasn't worked. We need a solution, and the two-state solution can only work if those who repeat this word mean it. So if the Americans, the Europeans, even Israel, they mean that they agree to the two-state solution, then they need to allow the Palestinians to establish their state, not to allow Jewish settlers to illegally build in the state, not to keep it under closed, but open it up so the Palestinians will have freedom. And then you can hold them accountable. You can say, okay, there's security cooperation and so on. But to say, we believe in two-state solution, but we do nothing about it. Let's wait till the Israelis agree. The Israelis are never going to agree to anything because they have lust for the land. They want a piece of land, not peace with the land, with the people. And so I think we need international friends, and maybe Joe Biden is the one. I don't know, but we need international friends who can speak truth to power and who can give us, what you have with children, which is tough love. You need to be loving them, but also telling them there is a limit to what you're doing. You can't continue to build settlements. You cannot continue to carry out pogroms like happened in Hawara. You have to make peace with your enemies. Either both of us, we have to make peace with Israel, and Gaza has to make peace with Israel. But we have to find a roadmap to reach this solution.
Yeah, I think it's the big mistake is that people think it's a zero-sum solution. If I win, you lose, but it shouldn't be like that. I'm sure it will take some time, but after the morning is over, it won't be ever over. Unfortunately, for everybody, it's not going to be over. But for the Israelis, it's going to take some time, healing and so on. But then they need to think rationally. Okay, what's the long-term solution? We can't accept that these Palestinians are all monsters, and we will never be able to have any kind of peaceful solution. Okay, it will take some time, and then there's another cycle, and we keep killing each other. If people think rationally for the long term, then give hope, accept the dignity of the other. What are the options here? To keep living this way, killing each other. Apartheid is another option. And then if you have apartheid, then who's going to accept Israel in the 21st century? Can you have a country that has apartheid? This is not acceptable. Do you want a one-state solution where Israelis and Palestinians live in one big country? Well, the number of the Palestinians, I think, is actually exceeds now the number of the Jews in the big country of Israel, Palestine, whatever you want to call it. Is this what the Israelis want? I'm sure they don't want. I'm sure they don't want to be an apartheid country where all the countries of the world just say you are not accepted, you are outside the nations of the world, you're not legitimate anymore. So the only solution, although this is today even barely acceptable, is the two-state solution. When Israel has already built settlements and about 700,000 Israeli Jewish settlers in the West Bank. So they made it very, very difficult, but maybe there is still a little bit of hope that with, swap of land and some way or another, there could be a viable Palestinian state. And slowly, giving a little bit of hope, giving dignity to the Palestinians, and on the other side, the Palestinians giving dignity and security to the Israelis, and then maybe, God willing, we pray for peace and something that would take us forward.
Yeah, well, I think as both of you point out, the solution to this requires political and decisions and steps forward. A military solution won't be the only one, and yet within that is the need for dignity and hope. And while I appreciate the point on the potential harmful mixing of religion and politics, it's often people of faith that are best equipped to make arguments.
Absolutely. I think our faith is a huge source for seeking peace. I think we have an absolutely perfect position to be peacemakers, as our Lord said on the Sermon on the Mount. And I think we understand the price of not having peace, and I think we can be that peacemakers, and I think we are in a position that is respected by our fellow Palestinians, who are in position that we can also reach out to Israelis, but it needs a political solution. Our faith is a moral that gives us the power every day, and we do need, intervention from up high. We as human beings cannot solve this conflict. We do need to pray for peace, and we need to work for peace. I think we have to do both of these things at the same time.
Yeah, and unfortunately, sometimes fellow evangelicals abroad, especially in America, sorry to put it on the table, also to take a very irresponsible role in giving full backing to Israel, unconditional, without looking at all, disregarding the Palestinians totally. I think it's time that all Christians, including the evangelical Christians, take a more balanced and more peacemaking approach towards the conflict and not taking sides. Be pro-Israeli, but also be pro-Palestinian. Love the Palestinian like you love the Israeli. Ask for the dignity. Pray for the peace of the city. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, not only the western side of Jerusalem, but the eastern side of Jerusalem. Jesus cried on Jerusalem, cried because of the people. He knew that where they were going. We need people who will cry on Jerusalem because of the hatred and the racism over there, and the dividedness and the separation in the town of Jerusalem, which is like a symbol for the whole Israel-Palestine. So we need people who can contribute to peace, contribute to people loving each other, and not just putting a stigma. Palestinians, they are all terrorists, they are all Muslims, they are I don't know what, good and bad. It's not good and bad. It's people at the end of the day. Some are better than others, maybe. I don't know. It's not for me to judge or to any of us to judge. But at the end of the day, people, you can reach a soft point and you can talk to them and you can appeal to their values and appeal to their dignity and to their kindness and so on. And without that, we will not have any prospect for peace or any prospect for the future. We will just be like animals, sorry for the term, and just killing one another. We need to believe in that people have some kind of goodness or some kind of kindness, and you can reach that with the Spirit of the Lord, with our Lord really intervening and really with His Spirit of peace penetrating the hearts of the people in our land like anywhere.
Well, thank you very much for the way in which both of you are doing that through the vocations and callings that you have in front of you, and for doing that even in how you've modeled this conversation today. So Botrus, Daoud, thank you so much for joining us, and appreciate the incredible work that you're continuing to do, advocating for dignity and working for peace in a really challenging circumstance. So thank you, and look forward to future conversations, future collaborations with you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you. Bye-bye.